look better.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the stream for Some Kind of Animal. I'm Christian, one of the booksellers at the Astoria Bookshop. Before we begin, I want to just thank everyone for joining us and supporting us through this time and coming to all of our virtual events, because I know we've had so many at this point. I'm really excited to introduce these two authors. So let's begin. So Maria Romasco-Moore is the author of Ghostographs, a collection of short stories paired with vintage photographs. Some Kind of Animal is her first novel. She is an instructor at the Columbus College of Art and Design. To learn more, go to mariaromasco-moore.com or follow Mar Romasco on Twitter. And the conversation partner today is Victoria Lee, who grew up in Durham, North Carolina. They have been a competitive pianist, a hitchhiker, a pizza connoisseur, an EMT, an expat in China and Sweden, and is now a science doctoral student. Very impressive resume. Lee is the author of the forthcoming A Lesson in Vengeance, as well as The Fever King and its sequel, The Electric Air. They currently live in New York. And hopefully you can take it away from here.
Yeah. So incredibly excited to talk to you, Maria. I have your book here, and I read this. I live Instagrammed my reading of this book, and I ended apparently at 1:55 in the morning. I had stayed up and read it in one sitting. I couldn't put it down, and I said, I started reading this book 3 hours ago and just finished it now. Holy crap, go ahead and mark your August clear, because this book is the wildest I've ever read. And that, I feel like that pretty much encapsulates my reaction to it. I feel like you do an incredible job handling all sorts of different themes, like mental health and poverty and parental legacies and misogyny. And it's incredibly impressive. So I'm just curious about your process writing this book. Like, what was that like, especially like incorporating so many different complex themes?
Well, first of all, thank you. That is an awesome reaction. So very flattered. Yeah, I mean, I never set out when I'm first starting a project being like, ooh, time to tackle some complex themes. You know, let's get real deep. That usually sort of, I guess, comes later. Like for this book, it just started with my interest in feral children in general, and a mural that I had seen in a tiny Southern Ohio town that had like twin little girls, both holding black kittens, painted on the side of an abandoned building, if I remember correctly. And so I started writing about it, and then the themes kind of emerged. Some inevitably from the setting, for instance, like the tiny town where I saw that mural is very much the inspiration for the fictional, small, sort of rural Ohio town that the book is set in. But also, I think anytime you're writing, and especially a novel, just like everything that's been swirling around in your brain, the things that you get stuck on, the things that you're concerned about, that just kind of pours out onto the page. And it's also, for me, writing is definitely a way to process those things. So yeah, I mean, mental illness, especially the way it runs in families, is definitely something I think about a lot. So that, came out on the page. And misogyny, normalized misogyny, that, I mean, those were things that came out on the page. And in the first draft, like, that's all just kind of coming out. And then in revision, I much more consciously will try to tease that out and be like, okay, what do I actually want to say about this, as opposed to in the beginning, I'm kind of just all the stuff that's been swirling around in my head. Maybe I don't even really know what I think about it until I write about it, I guess, if that makes any sense.
So more of like a pantser than a poem.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll like reverse outline a lot. Like once I have written like a big old messy lump of words, I will then write out an outline of what I've done and then look at it and be like, oh God. But yeah, I've tried. I've tried to be someone who can plan. I think I'm getting a little closer to that, but it's still.
I was curious.
I enjoy that. Yeah. I enjoy it being a little messy.
Well, I think it's good. I mean, clearly it works for you. So like, I'm just curious, like when I've always wanted to ask a pantser this. So like when you like reverse outline, how well does that outline match like the beats that you would expect to see in like a real book? Like, do you just do it intuitively?
I don't know. What is a real book?
Good point.
Gosh, I mean, this novel especially went through so many weird, messy stages. I feel like the amount of times I've said messy so far is way too many, but it's very accurate. Like the very first draft of this, and I mean, I don't know if it really deserves to be called a draft. It was never like a full draft, but the very first sort of something that eventually became this project had like multiple points of view. It jumped back and forth between two timelines. Like I had no idea what I was doing. It was, I mean, a lot of the, I mean, it wasn't ultimately very long. Some of the like ideas and feelings that were in that early stuff made it into this book, but most of it just as sort of backstory. And so I like threw that all out and started fresh. And then later on in the process, I thought I had a complete draft and I like had an ending. And then after talking to somebody, they were like, I feel like it gets interesting right at the end. And so I wrote like a whole nother like third of the book. This was before even submitting it to agents or editors or any of that. I mean, so no, it kind of grew in very strange, unpredictable ways. So no, it probably didn't have a coherent structure to begin with. It's a long way of answering your question.
But so like you have all this material left over, but do you find that's like, even though you don't get to use it in the book, it's still helpful, like, you know, iceberg method style, like the reader sees the tip of the iceberg, but you know everything that's underneath it, like all the deleted scenes, all of their backstories.
Oh goodness, yeah. And I really enjoy that. Well, I really enjoy deleting. That's my favorite part of, I was gonna say revision, possibly my favorite part of writing. It's my favorite part of revision. I just love deleting things.
Well, you're a unicorn for sure.
Huh?
You're a unicorn.
Oh, am I? Well, yeah.
Well, you know, like everyone's always like, oh, I can't delete my darlings.
More ways than one. No, I love it. It's so freeing. It makes me so excited to just go through and like just like slash and burn the entire manuscript and be like, yeah, you know what? This entire scene needs to go, and then I like cut it free, and then it feels so good. I don't know. That's my favorite thing.
No, that's awesome.
And so yeah, I like to, yeah. I mean, I cut out the extra point of view. I cut out the sort of past timeline because I realized it wasn't working. But I think having written all of that, yeah, was very useful because it allowed me to have a good sense of stuff that comes through in this book just by other characters sort of talking about it. It's, you know, it's like haunting it. If one wanted to be fancy, I don't know. Yeah, definitely helps.
So when I was reading for a lot of the book, I wasn't actually sure if Joe was hallucinating Lee or if Lee was real. I'm not going to ask you to say one way or another. But by the time I got to the end, I realized that regardless of what was true, like that whole process of questioning Joe's experiences, like as she did in the book, was kind of the point. And it felt like a really great way to show what it's like to deal with mental illness and like questioning your own reality and trauma. And so I was wondering if you could tell me more about your motivation behind writing so ambiguously and what you hope readers will take away from that part of the story.
Well, if you've learned anything about my process so far, it's that it's often messy. Well, I can say I wrote some parts of this, well, I mean, a good chunk of it while I was in an MFA program. And so I did, not all of it, but there was like an early chapter, a couple of chapters that I submitted to workshop. And I remember sitting there and getting very frustrated because the workshop, in my memory at least, just sort of descended into everyone arguing back and forth with each other about whether the sister was real or whether the sister wasn't real. This was one of those workshops where like I wasn't supposed to talk, and like they just spent the whole time talking about that. I'm like, this isn't useful to me. You know, and I was
flattering, like it clearly gripped them.
Yeah, no, I know. So what I learned from that was that was something that the readers were interested in. So I did need to engage with it. Yeah, I mean, I do think that ambiguity is something that I had I don't know. I definitely like to play with ambiguity in my writing. Sometimes I think I maybe in the past have done it too much. I think I'm always maybe trying to sort of feel like I'm always sort of trying to skirt just the sort of the dangerous edge of being just ambiguous enough without confusing or losing the reader, I guess. But I do want there to be mystery always. Because that's what I like when I'm reading. I like a book where I have to figure some things out, or I need to like, I don't know, where I feel like I need to sort of gaze deeply into the words, not because it's confusing, but because there is like this extra. It feels like there's this extra level. That I feel like I'm rambling now.
I mean, I think you accomplished that. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I was reading it, one of the reasons, like, I mean, obviously it was thrilling, so I had to read it in one sitting, but also, like, I felt like there was these threads that I was trying to hold together, and I could tell from the very beginning you weren't going to, like, spoon feed me the answers, so I was going to have to piece together this puzzle and figure it out for myself, and I was worried if I stopped, especially, like, at 1 a.m. and went to bed, when I woke up, I would forget like some of the really important parts, and I wouldn't be able to figure it out, and I wouldn't have like the right experience reading the book. So, which actually was my next question, which is, what would be like the ideal experience you would want readers to have reading it, or like what you want going through their mind, or what feeling were you hoping they'd have when they put the book down?
Well, the ideal experience would be that they are sitting out in the deep woods, and the sun is filtering down through the leaves, and the wind is rustling the trees. But if that's not possible, then yeah, I don't know. I guess that they would just be going into it knowing that this is a dark, weird book, and that just sort of jump in head first, be willing to go on the journey, and that sounds so cheesy.
No, it was pitched to me as a mind twister by Rory Power, and so like when she said that, I was like, oh yeah, I have to read it. So
I mean, that's the kind of thing I like, I guess. If somebody's like, this book was weird, I'm like, oh, give it to me. I want to read it.
No, same. Like I heard this about a couple other books recently too, like Catherine House, where people are like, there's not like I don't really know how to explain what it's about. It's just really weird and strange. I was like, oh yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, a lot of my favorite books are ones that kind of get their hooks into me that way. Like they linger because they're not smooth. That's getting very abstract. My students, when I teach her, I think they maybe get annoyed because I use way too many metaphors. I'm a writer. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely enjoy a book that's smooth, and it's a pleasant ride, and everything's sort of, I don't know, spelled out, and it's a nice narrative journey, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But I books that I feel like are more sharp, more jagged, they maybe stick with me more, and so I don't know. That's the kind of book I enjoy reading, and I don't.
No, I really liked it. I felt like you just masterfully made it so that the reader had to be in the story, like the reader had to be part of the experience, and like if the reader wasn't like going through that process while they were reading it of like dealing with the ambiguity and trying to piece it together and like not having everything told to them and seeing the jagged edges, like it wouldn't, I don't know. It was just an incredible feeling to read it. And I hope that other people also experience the weird mind twisty moment that is basically reading an entire book. But okay, so as somebody who grew up in the South and has spent a lot of time in small towns, the depiction of the small town in your book is, and especially like the like attitudinal cohesion that you kind of get among people who live in small towns. I felt like it was just really accurate and well depicted. And so I was wondering, I know you said that you were partly inspired by a small town, but did you grow up in a small town, or like did you have other experiences in environments like that or with people like that?
Well, so I was actually born in the South, in Baton Rouge, but Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My parents moved when I was pretty little, so I mostly grew up in central Pennsylvania, a couple of different towns. The town where I went to high school, Altoona, Pennsylvania, it wasn't exactly small, I guess. Like my high school had, I think, 2,000 kids, so it wasn't small, but it had a similar, in some ways, sort of economic history, I guess, as some of the coal mining towns. In Altoona, the big booming industry had been railroads. and there were all these railroad factories, and I mean that's like what the town had grew up around. And then as the railroad industry declined at some point in the 20th century, the town was devastated economically, and so there was all these empty warehouses, and the downtown was full of empty buildings, and there were a lot of abandoned houses, and I don't know. So I mean, it's probably part of why I was drawn to the smaller towns in Southern Illinois. I did live in a small town in Southern Illinois, but it was a college town, and so it was more the sort of towns, the more rural towns that the town in the book is based on. I guess I did not exactly grow up in a small town. I did do spent a lot of time in the towns that were the inspiration for Lester, Ohio. I read a lot. I found these really cool sort of old videos that somebody had interviewed a lot of residents of the area. I don't know. So I'm glad that it came across as feeling true to small town.
Yeah. And kind of related, I guess, like you were talking about like the legacy in like Altoona of like the railroad industry falling apart and like the way that just devastated the town. And like that's, as you noted, like a common history in a lot of Appalachia. So like, the coal mining industries, for example, and combined with like the physical isolation that the mountains create in a lot of the hollers, where it's like there's no road in or out, or it's just like, or there's only one, and it's very isolated physically, creates a really specific kind of culture that I felt like was really well depicted. And so I was wondering how you saw that culture, like the environment that they're physically in, influencing the mindsets of Joe and Aggie and Savannah and everyone.
Yeah, I mean, and so one thing that's not precisely where I grew up. I think people argue about whether Central Pennsylvania counts as Appalachian or not. We definitely had some very small mountains that kind of.
No, because Appalachian, like that Appalachian Trail goes through PA. So.
Yeah, that's true. We had these little small mountains that sort of were in a ring around the town that always felt like they were sort of enclosing us. But definitely in Southern Ohio, down to West Virginia. For me, what I find most fascinating is the landscape itself and the relationship that the towns and the people, I guess, have with the landscape. That sounds very academic, but it's just very close. Like it does feel like the forest or the wilderness is sort of, I don't know, almost encroaching, but it's not necessarily threatening, but it does feel like it might just sort of overgrow and take back over at any moment, or perhaps the town will just dissolve into it. It feels, I don't know, the boundary feels very fuzzy. And I do get the sense too that many people who live in the Appalachian region have a very sort of strong sense of place, strong sense of being rooted to their homes. I know that's not, unique to the Appalachian region. There's a lot of cultures and places where that's true. And a lot of people who live in the Appalachian region, their ancestors probably were immigrants to the region, but over the years they've I don't know. I don't have that, I guess. I don't have a very strong sense of place, so I tend to become fascinated by other places and by people who do have a strong sense of place. We didn't move around a ton, I guess, when I was a kid, but we moved around enough that for whatever reason I had a sort of restlessness and a feeling that or maybe it's just me, I felt like I didn't really belong anywhere. And so I am very interested in people who have a close relationship with the land. So I guess that's all I have to say about that.
No, I mean, I feel like the land and like the terrain and the magic of Appalachia felt like its own character in the book, and that came through really, really clearly. And so I'm like curious, do you think like a girl could actually survive out there on her own? Like, is there anything like about Appalachia or about these environments that you think makes it more possible than in other places?
Well, I mean, that same thing I described already about like the wilderness feeling so close, and how like the boundary between it and, I don't know, civilization already feels really blurry. I guess is sort of part of why it almost does to me. It really does feel like you could just sort of disappear into the woods. I don't know, in the city there's like a really clear boundary between like, here's a park, here's a town, and that feels a lot blurrier in some of these regions. I mean, I have read a lot about various different feral children. You know, and there's a lot of variability in the cases. Some of them are just probably outright false. Some of the cases of what we call feral children are just children who suffered severe abuse and neglect but didn't live in the wild. You know, so to the extent that it is actually possible, I did definitely try to account for that in some of the things that occur in the book. There are enough cases, though, that I do think that human beings are very adaptable, or can be, you know, even to really extreme and sometimes terrible conditions. People, especially children, can adapt to a lot. So
Yeah.
In that case, it feels to some degree possible to me.
One of the questions that I had on here was kind of like another thematic one, going back to that, which is talking about like misogyny and slut shaming in the book. And, you know, on the slut shaming side of it, like attitudes towards, you know, Savannah, or like just the idea of promiscuous women in general. And I was left thinking about how society would rather a woman be like dead than have agency and strength and own their own sexuality. I just felt like there was so much interesting content in the book, like at this intersection of like mental illness and misogyny, and like when we decide to believe women versus when we don't. And so I was just wondering what you hope that the readers will take away in terms of like Savannah's story arc, for example, and all the different threads on misogyny and slut shaming that you have.
Yeah. I mean, and that's definitely a theme that emerged that, you know, in revision, I was very conscious about trying to tease out internalized misogyny, especially was something that I was really trying to grapple with.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that can be a really difficult topic to tease out, I guess, because it's so, it's kind of invisible. It's because it's like inside you. You know, how do you see something that is literally inside you? So Jo, the main character, she gets like a lot of different labels sort of thrown at her throughout the book. You know, she gets called a lesbian, she gets called a slut, she gets called crazy. She doesn't really know how to deal with that. Her response is she kind of just wants to run away. She doesn't want to deal with all of the ways that society tries to sort of put girls into a box. She doesn't want to necessarily act the way she's supposed to, and she's being judged a lot. Though at the same time, right on the very first page, she kind of reflexively throws one of these labels, slut, like back at her sister, because she's wearing a short dress. You know, sort of as an insult, she does that without thinking, you know, the way that sisters kind of, I don't know, are always trying to get each other's goat or whatever.
Yeah.
But it washes right off her, like her sister. It doesn't mean anything to her sister. Her sister doesn't give a shit about, you know, whether people think her skirt is too short. You know, she's going around breaking the necks of rabbits with her bare hands. She has very different problems. I mean, she has problems, but they're very different problems. So yeah, I mean, one of the sort of internal struggles that Jo has is like, at the same time that she's rejecting all of these labels, though, like for herself, she feels, you know, she feels all this pressure of people putting these narratives on her, and she's rejecting it. But at the same time, she's sort of doing the same thing. She has internalized it, you know. All these people have judged her mother and come up with this sort of narrative that they have of like, oh yeah, okay, there was this girl who got pregnant as a teen, and then she got murdered, and that's just what happens, and that's a story that like makes sense to them, and they, you know, they judge her mother, and then they kind of judge Jo through the lens of that story. And yeah, so Jo's rejecting that. Jo's trying to move away from that, but at the same time, then she turns it also on her friend Savannah. And her friend Savannah has a very different relationship to femininity. She performs gender in a different way than Jo does, and she's sort of exploring her sexuality in a way that Jo isn't really comfortable with yet. And Jo struggles with not taking the sort of things she's learned, the judgments that she's learned from society, from other people, and turning them sort of against her friend and wanting to judge her friend too. And, you know, she's also sort of maybe jealous of her friend and maybe has a crush on her friend. And you know, it's complicated. That's my experience of being a teenage girl. It's really messy and complicated. There's that word again, messy. It is. I don't know. that was my experience. Friendships are messy. Everything's kind of messy. But I did try to not shy away. Sounds like I'm doing something noble. I don't know. I tried to portray how messy that is. I did try to. I mean, I'm not trying to really write a role model in Joe. I'm trying to, as best as I can, show what I feel like is a genuine portrayal of what that's like. I mean, I do try to have her. She does. I do think she grows by the end of it, in terms of accepting her friend, accepting her friend, realizing that that she doesn't have to, like, there's nothing that she needs to get over, that her friend isn't doing anything wrong. I don't know.
No, I think that's true. And it's, it's a really tough cycle to get out of, where you're caught in that loop of dealing with society's misogyny and then applying it to yourself and to other people and perpetuating that same cycle on them and on yourself. And but I think that it was really well done in the book, and is one of the things that I liked best. So I have one last question, and then we can do our game thing, which is, without giving too much away, how much did you see Lee as an avatar for Jo herself, or like a foil for Jo, who Jo might have become? And generally, just like in what ways you think Lee and Jo are similar versus different?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely something that is on the page, with Jo sort of sometimes thinking of her sister as like this sort of other possible self, like, her sister maybe being the way that she would or could act if you stripped away the need to act a certain way, all the sort of societal, I don't know, expectations and norms. Caring what other people think. And, maybe she romanticizes that a little bit. That there are times when she lets herself act the way that she thinks her sister would. But definitely, like, already all the sort of things that her sister Lee shows on the outside, the ferocity, the fear, Jo has all that on the inside. She does romanticize it, though, a little bit, because I tried to also show, that's one of the things with feral children too. I'm working on writing a little thing about my interest in feral children right now too, for this one writing website. And like, it's so easy to sort of romanticize that, like the idea of being like wild and free and totally shrugging off society. And so that's definitely something that Jo's doing. But at the same time, like, Lee, her sister, her behavior is very much a reaction to, sort of trauma. In a lot of ways, if you read the book, you'll say goodbye.
No, and I mean, this is making me think about, like, kind of like the parallel, I guess, between the setting we were talking about earlier, with like the wilderness encroaching on the town, but then also like the wildness of Lee encroaching on like the society, on like Jo's like society shaped mind and like her patterns of behavior. And so I just feel like I just realized that was mirrored, and I think that's really cool.
Ooh, let's pretend I did that on purpose. Maybe I did. I don't know. I don't remember. I wrote this a while ago.
You did it so
Publishing moves slow.
No, it was super cool. Okay, so I already told you this, but I thought we could play a little game.
I like games.
Have I ever? So I made these little cards for me, and then you have them for you too, right? It's like I have and I haven't. Yeah, mine looks like terrible, but that's all right. So my thought is, I will say a list of different things that you may or may not have done. And if you've done them, then you put up I have. And if you haven't, then you put up I have not. And you can share stories about these two if you want. It doesn't just have to be the answer. All right, so first one. Never have I ever read fan fiction of my own work.
Oh, I don't think any exists.
What about in general?
Huh?
What about in general?
Fan fiction?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
I read a ton when I was younger. Yeah.
What
Not in a while, but. Oh, sorry.
What fandom did you read?
Oh, I read a ton of Harry Potter. Yeah. I mean, that was where I was at as a youth. yeah, it definitely, like, when I think back on, like, what is Harry Potter as a story, like, I honestly remember some of the fan fictions I read more than I remember the actual stories. There was this one that I absolutely loved that was all about Remus Lupin and uh, uh, Sirius when they were like kids and whatnot. I mean, not kids, but like teens, huh?
Is it the Shoebox Project?
Yeah. It was called the Shoebox Project. I loved that way, like, probably more than the actual books. Like, it really, to me, captured like what it felt like to be like an angsty teen, which I was at the time. You know, and there was like unrequited love, and it was really good. It was very good. I was like, damn, this is better than the books. So
I
yeah,
know. I'm gonna go and reread it now.
no.
All right. Never have I ever written fan fiction.
I have not, but I think it's a little bit weird that I haven't. I mean, I have in my head, I guess. I mean, like, yeah, I've watched many a show and been like, I feel that those two are doing it in my heart. They are in my heart. I don't know. I feel like I know I never have. I've never. I read a lot of it when I was younger, so it would have made sense for me to have done so. Maybe it's because I'm a very slow writer.
Yeah.
No, just it didn't. It never actually appealed to me to write it. Which is like maybe too bad because I know that like a lot of people were able to find like cool writer communities through that. I was very much when I was like a teenager, I was very shy on the internet. I was like a lurker. I don't know if people still use that term, but
You're
like
like every parent's dream child on the internet. It's like, don't talk to strangers. Like,
oh well, okay. I mean I did talk to strangers in AOL Instant Messenger. I didn't, you know, I read a lot of people's live journals.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I didn't have a live journal.
So you really were just like invisibly floating through.
A little bit, yeah. I was like afraid to exist publicly. So this was terrifying for me. Hello.
Yeah, welcome. Okay, never have I ever written a character into a book based off someone that I knew in real life.
I mean, has anyone not done that?
I haven't.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it would get awkward because I'd like be thinking about them, like the character or something, hanging out with them, and or they'd like recognize themselves. I don't know.
Okay, well, so when you say like new in real life, like, I mean, I feel like, okay, so first of all, a book, I only have like two of those. Well, I guess that's a lot, but whatever. I mean, that's an okay number.
It's more than most people.
One of them's flash fiction though, so it's very short. It's very short. A lot of it is pictures. They're cool pictures, but you know, yeah. So nobody in this book is based on anybody I know. In short stories, often it's based off of somebody I like saw once in a bar or like had a brief conversation with at a bus stop. So maybe I like does that count?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like that's.
I definitely wrote an entire story based on a guy I talked to in a bar once. Like, so is that somebody I know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like that's honestly like in some ways more interesting than somebody you actually know because you're inventing. Like,
I mean, so I made most of it up, but I mean,
right.
I did that conversation as like the jumping off point.
Yeah.
You know, I've definitely written stories about people I like saw in a bar, and I like yeah.
Well, it's like one of those things like where, you know, you're bored waiting in a doctor's office or something, and so you make up backstories for the random people in the waiting room. Maybe that's like a writer thing. I don't know if normal people do that, but I feel like writers do that.
I think other people do that too. Yeah, I don't know. I've definitely written stories that are sort of based off somebody that I had a conversation with once, or maybe somebody that I like would see periodically on a bus. But in those cases, I'm making up the vast majority of their details, and I've just taken like some small detail.
Yeah.
I should not have been so quick to do this because now everyone knows. Am I in your book? Although maybe that's good. Then they'll buy my book and be like, oh, Am I the feral sister? Maybe. No, yeah. So I know well, because then that's not, I don't know. It's not a character that I can make up, but definitely people that I've like had one conversation with on a bus.
No, I mean, I think that there's like inspiration for writing everywhere. And if it's the guy on the bus, then it's the guy on the bus.
Oh yeah, or like I went to an act, I mean, a few little bits of one sermon in this book. There's a character who's a pastor, and I did go to a church service, and I did steal a few lines of that sermon. Nothing else about the pastor who gave that sermon is nothing like the pastor in this book, but I did steal a few lines of his sermon. Sorry, Pastor, what's his face? I don't know who we were. Whatever.
What else are you going to do? Write your own sermon? Absolutely not.
I mean, that's just that was before I even wrote the book, and I was just like, this is fascinating, and I wrote it. I mean, I feel like writers are sort of scavengers. I mean, whether you realize it or whether you're doing it consciously or not, I do feel like we're often just sort of like filtering in parts of the world. And a lot of it happens like unconsciously, perhaps,
Yeah.
So maybe you have written a character based on
things
you saw on a bus and you didn't realize it.
I name characters after friends that I have in real life all the time. Like, yeah, my best friend, Emily Martin.
Well, that's,
Fever King.
I draw the line at that. No, I don't. That's fun.
Okay, never have I ever stayed up all night writing.
I was gonna ask you that if I was supposed to do some. No, I'm old and tired.
Yeah.
I have stayed up all night telling a story back when I was like, gosh, I would have been like 11 or 12. I have very fond memories. There was a sleepover and we were all in a tent in somebody's backyard, and I made up this story that I just like kept telling for like the entire night that starred #I'm old.
I know. I just saw that.
It's true. But yeah, I made up like a story, and I was telling my like sort of little friends the story like the entire night, and I just kept going, and it was so fun. I mean, it was starring like them and our English teacher who we hated, and I don't know. I'm sure it was partially fueled by because when you're kids, staying up all night's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Just get like
not now, but when you're like 12.
Yeah. So yeah, I like telling stories.
Yeah, I've definitely stayed up all night like reading. But
oh yeah, that too.
That's different. I can't like keep my mind working and focused and productive for a whole freaking night. Never have I ever had a feral sister attack somebody and get it blamed on me. She's not answering, guys. Oh no.
Abstain from the question.
So is this like your hint? It's time to turn to Q&A?
Sorry, what?
I said, is this your hint? You're trying to tell me that it's time for Q&A?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can switch to that. How does that work?
I don't know. I don't know if like Christian is supposed to send us questions or not. Okay, so people are supposed to put questions in the comments in the little chat. So yeah, if you have questions for Maria, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask more questions, and I'm an academic in real life, and they're probably going to be rough.
Oh, I'm trying to think of, let's see. Never have I ever, I had one. Never have I ever, I was gonna ask the stay up all night writing one. I don't know why I thought of that one as well. Oh, here's one. If I could assign a musical genre to some kind of animal, what would it be? Just one, forever. Well, it would definitely be Dolly Parton's song Jolene. The musical genre of Dolly Parton's song Jolene. Because I love that song. It's definitely where I got the main character's name. It's such a good song because it is, I mean, it's rooted in this sort of, like Appalachian folk, how country music sort of grew out of that, but it definitely takes, I don't know, I love that song. It's sort of dark. It's dark, not in its lyrics, but in its instrumentals, actually.
Yeah.
Probably the wrong word. It's got this like great beat, and then her voice is so haunting and beautiful, and it basically sounds like a love song where the female main singer is singing to Jolene about how beautiful she is. It's probably not what Dolly Parton intended, but that's how I'm gonna take it. And yeah, so I mean, folk music, haunting folk music, but Dolly Parton's Jolene, especially.
I love that.
There
I
we
love
go.
that song so much.
Am I supposed to be reading out the questions?
Oh, it doesn't matter. We can do them. This guy asked, did you ever feel stuck during the writing process? If so, how did you reignite the creative engine?
Creative engine. The creative engine. Yeah, I feel stuck all the time. Like, I don't know, this one Christmas break, I remember when I was in the MFA, I was just super depressed, and so then I just played Stardew Valley like all day, every day, and it cured my depression. So that's what I recommend to anyone feeling sad. But also, I don't know, I actually feel like it's, and other writers have said this, so I mean, this is not unique to me, but I definitely endorse the idea of necessary fallow periods. Like, if sometimes if you're stuck or whatever, you need to not be writing. You need to not be writing in a specific way, though. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, because the whole idea of letting a field lay fallow is so that it can, I don't know, rejuvenate and become once again fertile for planting the seeds of creativity or whatever. I guess you wanted me to use the engine metaphor instead of a field metaphor, J.D. Stucker, but whatever. Whatever, deal with it, J.D. Stucker. So yeah, sometimes I feel like you need to let the writing field lay fallow, and you need to reinvigorate it with, reading a lot of books and going for, short term. If I'm stuck, I'll get up and take a walk. Longer term, sometimes it is better to just, put your work aside for, if you can, for a longer period of time, week, a month, and read a lot of stuff. That's what I would do.
I know, like, when I'm editing, anytime that like I have to go and do another revision pass, I just can't look at the book or think about the book for like months sometimes. So yeah, I completely agree. Sometimes you just need to like have your brain be occupied with something that's not writing and refill the creative well. So somebody asked, Andrew Hemmert asked, what were your main novel influences while writing this book?
Can I answer that? Yeah, so definitely like my biggest sort of direct influences. One of my favorite books of all time is We Have Always Lived in the Castle.
Yes.
Shirley Jackson. So that's a pretty direct influence. I mean, again, though, I didn't even really realize it was until I had already written the book. And I'm like, oh, damn. But I mean, I love that book. Beloved by Toni Morrison is another favorite book that was an inspiration. There used to be more ghosts in an early draft of this book. I like ghosts, as evidenced by my book being called Ghostographs. Tender Morsels by Margot Lanigan was an influence. I read this book called Dog Boy by, I think, Eva Hornung, maybe, which is another book about a feral child that's really good. About this like little Russian boy, I believe, who like goes and lives with dogs. So that would be an influence. Homecoming by Marilyn Robinson, actually, just because of I like the way that she wrote about the landscape was an influence. So those are some books.
I haven't heard of a lot of those. I feel like I'm here making mental notes. Like, okay, if you like some kind of animal, then you might like these books.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, this is how I'm getting my TBR for 2020.
Yeah, I mean, mostly older books, I guess, that were direct influences. The other thing, though, is that I read, like, a lot of stuff that maybe was in no way similar to the book that probably also influenced me.
Like, sometimes you're reading, like, I don't know, a nonfiction book about, like, salt, and then next thing you know.
Yeah. I'd say I try to, but it comes pretty naturally because I do love reading, but I do try to read a lot of different things. I mean, I love sci-fi and fantasy a lot, but I also, I read nonfiction. I read, sometimes I read realism, but yeah, I like literary fiction. Again,
No, I can tell.
blurry boundaries, but poetry. I read me some poetry every now and then.
Nice. So SS Birding asked, is nature in the natural world part of your book?
Yes, very much. And that's probably like my favorite part of the research for the book, was just spending a lot of time out in the woods in this area of the country and observing. I try my best to make the setting very present on the page, because I don't know, the setting is very important to the story, to the book. It means a lot to the characters, not just the feral sister, but all of the characters. Their relationship to the setting is very important. And also, I find it interesting. I like that in a book. So yeah, the natural world, a lot of the book takes place in the woods. So a lot of that, and tried to bring in a few wilderness tidbits. My aunt is a birder, and she shared at least one really cool bird fact that I snuck in there at one point. So
That's awesome. What kind of, is that like just bird watching, or is there like, I'm imagining like falconry now?
pretty much she rescues birds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Audrey O'Brien asked what kinds of books you're loving and reading these days. So more TBR time.
Oh, that's like suddenly pressure. What have I read? I'm looking around. I am reading Water Logic by Rory J. Marks, which is part of the Elemental Logic series. I definitely recommend all those. One of them that starts with, I think, Fire Logic. It's a really cool fantasy series. What else? I just started reading The Vegetarian by, I can't see it from here. I don't know. Maybe you've heard of it. I feel like it was like real buzzy a while ago. Well, read The Vegetarian. It is weird, cool so far. I mean, I'm only like halfway into it. What else am I reading? Can't see it. That's not a cat. That's a book. I mean, that's not a book. That's a cat. I just read Burn Our Bodies Down by Rory Power. That was pretty cool.
Oh, I love that book so much.
Yeah, I just finished. I read that in almost one sitting. Similar to I definitely like looked through that. So
it's very much like the same genre as some kind of anime.
Definitely.
Maybe the same music genre.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so Christian actually asked, how would our respective characters interact from the Fever King series and some kind of animal?
Oh.
I know. I feel like Gnome would like have some kind of grudging respect for Lee, just like shucking off the bonds of society and living out in the wild completely.
Would the wilderness be sort of a quarantine zone that's infected with wild magic?
Yeah, it could be. If you blended the worlds, then like maybe she's...
okay. Immediately I'm just blending the worlds, and I'm like, I want my characters to have magic powers because that's cool. So
wait. Okay, so what would their magic powers be though?
Oh shit. Okay. I don't know. I mean, something involving nature, obviously.
Maybe like this, she can turn invisible.
Oh yeah. The book I'm writing right now, the novel I'm writing right now, is all about a girl who's invisible. So.
Oh really? Can you tell us about it? Like, can you give us like a teaser of what's the?
Sure. I mean, so it's about this girl who's invisible, but it's not like a superpower. She cannot turn it on and off. She's just invisible all the time. It's been the way her whole life. She and her mother, who's also invisible, have spent their time just like traveling around the country, living in rich people's houses, like stealing their food, until eventually someone's like, "There's ghosts in here," and then they like are like, "Okay, we better move on." And like, so that's sort of like the baseline setup, and then some stuff goes wrong.
So every like haunted house story is just this like invisible family, like your time living in people's closets.
I'll just say the working title. Probably it's not like I mean, because the working title right now is "I am the ghost in your house." So
I like that.
I like it too
a lot. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun working on that as well. in the editing
I'm
phase.
so excited for it.
Yeah.
I've been reading The Shadows by Alex North, which is one of those books that's kind of like some kind of animal in terms of like having a lot of threads that you feel like you have to hold together. And I started it night before last, but then last night I picked it up and I just felt like I was missing something and that I wasn't like threading things together properly. So I had to start over.
Mhm.
But it holds up. It's just as good on the semi-reread. And I'm reading Felix Ever After by Kason Callender, which
Oh
is
yeah, I want to read that. Yeah,
so
that's,
good. Oh my god. Yeah. You should check that
I
out.
love the cover. Yeah,
Me too.
definitely that is on my to be read list.
I'm loving like the illustrated cover trend. And
Yeah, me too. I wonder if I can get an illustrated cover for my next book.
I know, maybe our
I don't want you to illustrate though, because the main character is invisible, so you just have to like illustrate around.
yeah, it'd be like their outline or like
You illustrate the other people. There's some other character. I don't know. I don't know how that would work, but yeah, no, I'm excited for that book too. I mean, this book's out. I don't, whatever. That's the funny thing about publishing though, is like I'm very excited for this book, but also like I've already moved on. I'm sorry, some kind of animal.
Oh my god, it's true though, where it's like, especially like the more books along you get, it's like when people read this now, I'm like, please don't actually like just skip
Yeah.
it, just don't. And it's like, yeah, that's like my only series out, but you're always thinking about like what you're
You should
writing.
read this so that you can then read the next one and
Yes.
be like, oh wow, she's really come a long way. No, I don't know. They're not connected though. I think I am probably dealing with some of the same themes.
Yeah.
Unintentionally, perhaps, in some ways. Although the next book is like super gay. This one's only a little bit.
Oh. Okay, I'm excited.
A little bit gay.
Wait. You say this one's a little bit?
It's a little bit gay. You read it.
I know. Let's see. What was I gonna say? I was gonna ask something. Oh yeah. Do you ever feel like there's like something like a theme or an issue that you feel passionately about that you feel like you're going to be chasing like over several books in your career?
Well, apparently, moms who have mental illnesses and fathers who are absent and withdrawing from society and living alone and avoiding all human beings. I don't know. There's been some things that are recurring a little bit, and I'm like,
Solipsism.
but then my editor was like, this book is so different. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. I'm dealing with it in a different way now. So
nice. I think
there you
that's
go.
cool. I feel like it seems to me like there's a really clear narrative thread connecting both of your books. So
Oh, and ghosts. There's always going to be, I mean, I guess there's metaphorical or literal. Yeah.
let's see. Does anyone else have more questions for us? I've got a never have I ever for you,
Oh, yeah.
which is never have I ever lied on a job interview.
I don't think so. But also, I feel like I haven't even done that many because, like, I used to mostly just wash dishes. And, like, I feel like they just ask, like, are you a human being? And then if you said no, they probably wouldn't care. Like, oh, you're an alien from, like, outer space. That's cool. Can you wash a dish? Can. Great. Here you go. Here's a sponge. So, like, that was my main job before I went to grad school, and then I taught, and then that's what I do now.
But you
And
didn't
also
lie in
write.
your grad school interviews.
Huh?
You didn't lie in your grad school interviews then.
Interviews. They didn't interview me?
They didn't interview?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Did they? I don't think. I mean, I just like wrote a thing and then I sent it in, and then they were like, okay. There's another question.
Oh yeah. Okay. If you could choose a man-made structure to haunt invisibly, if not entirely ghostily, what would it be? So you can't choose Appalachian Woods.
Well, maybe IKEA, because then I could sleep in a different room every night. But also, I kind of hate IKEA, so maybe not. IKEA stresses me out. So yeah, a library. I mean, it's a boring answer from a writer, but it's the truth. I mean,
like that.
to read. What can I tell you? I love libraries. I really miss the library right now. I'm very happy that my local library is doing like curbside pickup so that I can still get lots of books. I mean, I'm buying plenty of books too, but I read books I'm usually reading like 4 books at once. So I read books so fast that I do buy books. I love buying books. I recommend you all buy some books. But
Especially
I also recommend you get books from the library, support the library and bookstores. I like them both. Yeah.
Somebody wants to know what your cat's name is, which honestly, I also want to know this.
Wait, which this is Gamma Ray.
Oh.
Because this thing is mirrored. This is Gamma Ray. She has been sleeping here for the entirety of this interview.
Oh, sleepy baby.
Since I was 19. She comes from rural Southern Ohio. So it's entirely possible that her ancestors were, feral cats living wild and free. So, and my other cat is named Spiders.
Oh.
Ouch. She's a lot younger. And
Named after Spiders the animal or after Spiders Georg the outlier?
after Spiders the animal. But yeah, other people have asked that.
Oh yeah, I'm not original at all.
It's not a cat, it's a book. It's true. Is Gamma working on any books? Yes. Gamma is currently working on her memoirs.
Oh.
They are going to be approximately 6 volumes because she has a lot of life experience. She has been through so many things. She has actually lived in a lot of different places. I've moved her around a whole lot. Most of her life experiences have been sleeping. She is a cat, but
I mean, that sounds great to me.
A few exciting times. When I first got her as a kitten, she was about this big, and I immediately lost her. I thought I lost her. She was just in my apartment, but she had actually crawled like between the top of a book and my bookshelf, and I like couldn't find her for hours. And then when I finally found her, I was worried about her getting lost again, and I had to go to class. I was in college, and I shoved her in my purse and took her with me to film class.
Oh my god.
So,
I wish I'd been in that class. That sounds awesome.
yeah, she crawled out of my bag and sat on my lap while we went. I don't remember what, but it went pretty well.
I love that. I'm really okay. I also want to know who the guy in the painting behind you is. I've been wondering this all the time.
Yeah, so I love vintage photographs. I collect them, and a bunch of them are in my prior book. This is Eugene. I actually got him from my parents. We had Eugene hanging on the wall throughout a lot of my childhood. I don't know if it was the entirety of my childhood. And my parents were like, "This is Eugene." No, they weren't. Sorry, I named Eugene.
Oh, okay.
But the people would always come over and be like, "Who is that? Is that your uncle, your grandpa?" And they'd be like, "No,
it's Eugene."
I came up with the name Eugene, but yeah, I don't. He's just some random dude. My parents bought this at an antique store, I guess, at some point, and then passed it down to me. I now have a couple more in the other rooms that I also bought at antique stores. I love finding old photographs that for whatever reason other people, their families didn't want them, or I don't know, they just have ended up sort of unclaimed out in the world, and I'm there to be like, yeah, I love this.
Give them a loving home.
Sorry, what?
You're there to give them a loving home.
Yes, exactly. I will adopt this very severe looking.
Got rid of that photograph. What if it's haunted and that's why somebody got rid of it?
Well, I will adopt this ghost. I definitely aspire to purchase a dilapidated Victorian mansion that is super haunted. That is one of my life goals.
I love that.
It doesn't have to be super haunted. I mean, it can just be a Victorian mansion that I fix up. But if it's super haunted, that is a bonus because maybe it will put off other buyers, and then I can have it.
And just buy haunted artifacts, like creepy mirrors from flea market.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm down with ghosts. They can hang out with me. They probably have really interesting stories to tell.
Yeah, I feel like they probably would. So it is 8 o'clock, so that means that it's time. But Maria, thank you so much. I feel like this is so much fun talking to you. I loved I really just wanted the answers to all these questions as soon as I read your book, and this is before I knew you, of course, so I had to hold them inside. But
yeah, I was really nervous about this, but this ended up being really fun. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks so much. And those were great questions.
And if you want to buy either of our books, make sure you buy them from the Astoria Bookshop, who's hosting this launch event. They're awesome, and we love them.
Thank you so much, Astoria Bookshop.